everybody, it's Lisa Tamati here at Pushing the Limits, and welcome to the show once again. It's fantastic to have you with me. If you're a new listener, thanks for joining us today, and if you're a returning listener, I just so appreciate your loyalty. And on that point, if I could be so cheeky as to ask my loyal listeners at least to make sure you go and give us a rating on iTunes. That would be fantastic if that's possible, and give us a rating and review, and of course share the show with your friends and family and people that you think would enjoy some of the content. Now, before I get into the actual subject of the day, my businesses have been going through a really big expansion at the moment, and life is absolutely manic. And I may have to drop the odd podcast or two. So the last couple of years I've managed to do a weekly show, but just letting your loyal listeners know that there may be a week or two where nothing is happening while I get all my systems in place to be able to cope with the expansion that we're experiencing. So I do appreciate your loyalty, and hopefully we'll get back on track with a weekly show again shortly. Right, today I wanted to talk about a couple of things, and this is sort of some stuff that I've been working through myself. Certainly not a master of this area, but definitely have some experiences and some things to share with you. And it's around about dealing with resistance that's coming your way, dealing with failures, and how to stand back up again, and resilience. So a couple of things there to tackle. Now, the first thing I wanted to get to talk about is dealing with failure. Now, a fear of failure is what stops most of us from achieving our dreams, or for even in that case, taking on the big challenges that we would love to take on in our lives. We might look at a particular, take for example, if it's running related, which a lot of listeners obviously are into running, as am I. And maybe it's a big race, but then the doubts and the fears start to come in. But what if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I can't actually do what I'm setting out to do? And the first thing to note here is that every single one of us has these doubts and fears and moments of thinking, what the hell have I done, and what am I doing, and how am I going to achieve this? And understanding that that's a normal part of the process, and that's the brain's way of stopping you pushing outside of your comfort zone, because it doesn't want you to actually be uncomfortable. Our brains are very clever things, and they try and keep us in our known area of expertise and what we're good at. But when we stay in that comfortable zone, we don't push out, we don't grow, we don't change, we don't develop, we don't learn. We just start to go backwards slowly, and don't achieve all the great things that we have in our minds to do. And this is something that I've fought with for years. Obviously, I've taken on some massive challenges over the past quarter of a century, some things that have scared the absolute crap out of me. Some of them would never want to do again, and have really pushed the boundaries of what's possible. And there have been many times within that quarter of a century where I've actually not succeeded in the task at hand, and I've failed. I want to share one particular big failure for me was a run that I was doing in the Himalayas. Now, this one was with another guy. He was an expert on altitude. He climbed Everest, and we came up with this plan to do the world's highest marathon in Nepal. So that meant going up to the base camp of Everest and then climbing a little mountain on the side there called Kalapata, and starting from there to do a marathon and going over these big passes. And we were running at between 5,700 meters and about 4,500 meters. And when I say running, that's a euphemism. Anyway, this whole project took a year and a half to plan. It was a massive amount of organisation, the logistics, getting sponsors, getting film crews, etc. Now, I'd done a couple of races already at altitude. I knew that it was absolutely brutal. I knew that it wasn't my area of absolute expertise. I'd traditionally done a lot of desert races because I'm an asthmatic, but I wanted to once again push outside my comfort zone and to see whether I could do this. Now, as it panned out, this was the biggest failure probably, or one of the biggest failures of my career. And the reason why I bring that up and why that happened was a number of reasons. Obviously, all these things are usually complicated. But I managed to get altitude sickness was the key problem. Right up at the top at near base camp at Everest, and I'd walked in there for 2 weeks. We had a big group of people that the other guy was leading, and they were just trekking up to base camp and back, and we were going to be doing this big mission at the end of it, sort of thing. And when I got up there, it was like minus 20 degrees, and we climbed Kalapata 3 days before we were meant to actually start the race. And in this minus 20 degrees, and I had to move too slowly because we were with a whole other group of people, so I just got absolutely frozen and my lungs just packed up. I'm an asthmatic. I've got very, very small lung capacity, so it was always going to be a battle. But as I said, I had done a couple of things at altitude at this nature before, and I thought I could have a crack at it. But what actually happened is I got altitude sickness, and it got to a point where like 6 hours before the race I actually had to pull the pin on it, and it was the biggest disaster. You can imagine a year and a half of planning, of having film crews, and we even had the Prime Minister on the documentary and Sir John Kirwan, and it was just massive. And here I was, numpty, couldn't even start. I couldn't even tie my shoelaces, I was so sick. And I wasn't getting on with the guy that I was with, and he really didn't want me in the picture anyway. He wanted to do it by himself. And so, yeah, things just went from one lot of custard to the other. Now, the reason I talk about this one is because it absolutely blew my confidence. When I came back from that, it took a lot of deep soul searching to find out what the hell I'd been through, how to digest this failure, and how to stand back up again, and to put this all in perspective. And I'd had a couple of other big major failures along the way. And I say failure it's never a finite thing for me. It's not an end game. When you fail at something, it's always just a temporary setback. And very quickly I managed to turn it around in my head with some good friends and some people that helped me get through this tough time and to change my perspective on it. So when you are having rough times and when you are going through things that are really hard, and where you've had setbacks and things have happened to you that you probably maybe didn't deserve, and you don't know why it's happened to you, and you're starting to doubt the whole world and what's happening, just know that you're not the first one to go through these sort of dramas, and there is always, and I mean always, a silver lining to every cloud. If you can turn it around and turn it into a positive, if you can find the learning that it was in that lesson and then make it something that's to your advantage. So I have never in my entire life stopped and gone, I'm not taking on this challenge because I could fail. That is not the way my brain is hardwired. And even though I've had some major setbacks and some major failures and some embarrassing times in my life, I've always managed to stand back up again. I'll have a big crying session. I'll be down on the ground. I might be depressed for a few days and hide in my bedroom and not pick up the phone or whatever was the case at the time. But without fail, I got back up again, and I fought again, and I got back on the horse, so to speak, and carried on. And this is a really key factor for success, for ultimate success, is being able to take the knocks that come at you, the times when you have your setbacks, the times when you've failed, the times when everyone's laughing at you, and to be able to stand back up again and go again and go again and go again. Hopefully each time learning something. There's a famous Thomas Edison, obviously a famous inventor, invented the light bulb. Now, it is said that he tried 9,900 and something times and he failed. And if he'd failed and he'd stopped at that 9,999th time, or whatever it actually was, then we wouldn't have the electric light bulb. But he tried just one more time. And when he tried that one more time, he got it. He made it. He made it happen. And, of course, changed the history of the world. Now, this is an extreme example, but it does show that when you persist in something, you can have breakthroughs. So if you're experiencing, and this comes on to the second topic, which is dealing with resistance. Now, this is something that I know a lot about too in the last couple of years in my business and in my journey with my mum. I've come up against massive resistance. I've had to fight through things that I didn't understand. I didn't know what was coming at me, and it felt like the whole universe was conspiring against me. The thing is, once again, when you experience resistance, when people are putting you down, when they're telling you you can't do something, that is really fuel for the fire to keep on marching, keep on pushing forward, keep overcoming those obstacles. And when you're experiencing resistance from people around you, from your friends, even your family, that are telling you can't do something or you won't achieve it, or what the hell are you think you're doing, and that sort of resistance, or when you're finding in our business, for example, one of my businesses, we're experiencing huge problems and resistance in regards to technology and the struggles because we're not technical people, and the battles we've had to overcome, and trying to find somebody to help us to take that over, and then realizing, no, there's no way up it through. I'm going to have to understand this stuff if I want to be able to build a team. And there are times where you just want to actually chuck the whole thing in and go, what the hell? This is so complicated. This is so hard. This is such a battle. But it's in those times, if you can just push through those times, often you'll come out the other side and it'll be bright sunshine and clear skies and plain sailing for the next however long. If you give up in the middle of that resistance, you might have been just before the breakthrough. So I remind myself all the time of pushing through that resistance so as not to give up just before I got to the end goal, and to keep persevering. I think persistence and consistency and the discipline of carrying on regardless of whether you see change or progress or development or not is the key, one of the major keys to success. The times when I have persisted on, even though I couldn't see any development or any changes, because on a day-to-day basis too, we often don't see those minute improvements. You go to the gym, you train, you don't see any results. The next day you're just sore. You don't see that you've now got a six-pack, or you've now got bigger muscles, or you're now faster or stronger. You don't see that on a day-by-day basis. And we know that. We know it will take a certain amount of time, but this applies on across the board. It's only when you turn around and look where you were 6 months ago, where you were perhaps a year ago or 2 years ago, that's when you're going to see the progress. And if you can look back over that time and go, holy heck, and do this regularly, I have come a long way. I have succeeded. I have achieved this, that, and the other thing. I've developed, I've changed. And even though I might be stuck in the grind of it all, I can actually see and feel that I have made progress. When we take on at Running Hot Coaching new people who are new to running and they're starting out on a running program, the biggest hindrances to success are them comparing themselves on a week-by-week basis and not seeing improvement. So they all start running 1 week, and they might get some really big gains within 3 or 4 weeks, and we're teaching them how to actually run properly, how to hold your body, your posture, your steps, and not overstriding, and how to breathe. All those things give them quick wins, right? And then they get all excited. All of a sudden they can go from running maybe 2 minutes at a time to running half an hour at a time. And they expect that progress steps to keep going. And what typically happens is when they go out too hard, if they haven't got guidance, they'll go out too hard, they'll burn themselves out, they'll start to have injuries, they'll start to have problems, and then they'll go, oh, I'm worse today than I was 2 weeks ago, oh, this is a waste of time. And they'll give up. And that's so sad, because that has actually hit the point where they just needed to back off again a bit and solidify the learnings and let their body recover and integrate the learnings that they've had, and then to push on a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. But so often we go out too hard and we blow our gasket, so to speak, and then we're, gone the next day. So having a plan, having structure, having little milestones that you can go for, as well as your big long-term goals, all of these things can help us fight through those tough times, especially when we're starting out on something new. It's all very difficult and very hard until you start to get to a level where you actually become, in the case of running, you often become addicted to the whole thing, and it becomes a whole lot easier. And most people give up just as they're about to have that breakthrough. So make sure that you aren't one of those people that stopped just before they succeeded. Make sure that you push through and fight against the resistance. And try not to see everything as being against you. When you start to have those negative thoughts, and it's just such a battle, and I know I've been going through this myself with my businesses, it's like, oh, for crying out loud, when is this break going to come? When am I finally going to feel like we have momentum and we're moving forward? And you're struggling, and you start to talk yourself into this mindset of struggle. It's got to be hard, and it's going to hurt, and it's the more effort I put in, the more results I'll see. It's not always the case. With running, for example, Neil and I at Running Hot Coaching, we draw a line in the sand and we say, running even more kilometers than what you've been running and doing high mileage models and systems, they are not going to work on the long term. They will work for a short period of time. You'll make the adaptations, but as you get older, as your life starts to become more chaotic, as you've got children and careers, and then you're putting on this massive load of mileage on top of it, and you're doing it year in, year out, without any breaks, without any cycles in your training, and you're just getting this accumulated fatigue, and when you run into brick walls, you think, well, I just got to double down and go harder and go longer. And, I did it. I've been there. I know the mistakes that can be made. Sometimes it's better to come back and take a new approach, change your perspective, change the way you do things. In the case of Running Hot Coaching with Neil, when I came to him over a decade ago, absolutely broken and burnt out after doing, 13, 14 years of having done massive ultramarathons. I was in a bad space. And I went to him and I said, please help me. I've got this biggest race in my life coming up, the Badwater Ultramarathon. I've dreamt of this race for an eternity, and I actually feel like I can hardly move at all. I'm broken, I'm burnt out. And he changed all my systems. He made me take a step back. He looked at it strategically. Instead of just going, oh, well, if it's hurting, just double down, take a teaspoon of concrete and go harder. He actually went, no, we're going to pull off there. We're going to build in supplementation, we're going to build in nutrition, we're going to build in mobility work, we're going to build in strength and conditioning, and we're going to work on your mindset, not on running more kilometers. So sometimes taking a different approach and changing it and being more strategic with where you're going can also be a huge advantage. Well, guys, I hope this little session today around dealing with failures, around dealing with resistance when you're in the middle of a storm. There may be a calm just around the corner. There may be that breakthrough that you've been searching for. Remember, persistence, consistency, and trying not to see everything as being a big battle. And this is something that I tend to do because I've always battled and I've always fought. But trying to see things in a more positive light, taking it in a more step back approach and looking at things and being more strategic with your time and your energy and your efforts, and instead of just going, I've got to go harder, I've got to go longer, I've got to do more, I've got to achieve more, because that inevitably in business and in sport and your running leads to burnout. And that's not going to get anyone anywhere. So thanks very much, guys, for listening to me today. If you want to find out more about our coaching programs at Running Hot Coaching, we'd love you to go and check out our website, runninghotcoaching.com. Find out what we're all about. We have trained literally hundreds of athletes from all around the world. We have systems and programs in place for everybody, from beginner through to the advanced ultramarathoners. For people that are just putting on their first pair of running shoes and want to know how to run their first 5Ks right through. So if you've got a big race dream that you want to achieve, if you want to do something epic with your life and you have a very limited time and energy budget to spend on it, and you want to do it efficiently, if you want to avoid all the mistakes that are common, if you want to get to the next level without breaking yourself, then we are your coaches. Check us out at runninghotcoaching.com, and if you've got any questions, please email me at lisa@runninghotcoaching.com. I'd love to help you if you've got an injury issue, if you've got a mindset issue. Obviously, I'm very much into the sports psychology. If I can help you with any of your questions, just let me know. And if you can go over to iTunes and give us a rating and review for the podcast, we'd really, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time today, guys.